Hi and welcome to Kegels and Coffee. My name is Isabel and I am your host. My guest today is one of my closest friends and dancer Jenna Blumenfeld. Jenna grew up in New Canaan, Connecticut, where she began her formal ballet training at the New England Academy of Dance. After high school, she discovered modern dance, eventually leading her to earn a BS in kinesiology dance at Indiana University. While attending IU, she performed the works of several choreographers, including Paul Taylor, Martha Graham, and Elizabeth Shea. She danced with Thomas Ortiz Dance in New York City, and then ventured to Boulder, Colorado to pursue her lifelong affection for riding and outdoor sports. Jenna joined my dance company, the Ascendance Project, in 2012, and since then has become one of my strongest performers as well as closest friends. I will be honest, editing this episode made me cry every time I opened the project, and you'll see why. In our conversation, Jenna and I discuss our very different relationships to vulnerability. While to me, being vulnerable has always come naturally, Jenna has been pretty good at keeping her emotions at bay for most of her life, until recently. She is now discovering a whole new world of showing emotion without the fear of loss or abandonment. In this beautifully touching and very vulnerable conversation, we both share what our process of learning to be vulnerable has looked like. One of my favorite quotes from our conversation, "Maybe it's okay to cry a little when I talk."
No, seriously, what am I doing with my life?
How did that come across? Did they hear me?
I feel like I'm losing my fucking mind.
You're messed up.
I need to just Netflix and chill.
Like I'm gonna meditate like a badass.
It's just like this psychotic break, and then I get my period, and I'm like, oh, it was just your period again.
Am I the only one feeling this crazy? I'm so excited to be recording this episode with you, Jenna. And we will be talking about being vulnerable today. And I guess for me, being vulnerable is something that has always come natural to me. And I just feel really deeply. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it has brought a lot of joy and deep beauty, and it has also, made me feel incredible pain. But I just don't feel like I have a choice. I feel like I'm just naturally vulnerable, and I know sometimes to my own detriment, I guess. I have the tendency to overshare, and I've had to learn over the years to be really careful and conscientious of who I share with and how much I share, who's really in the in circle in my arena. And so I think that has been an interesting lesson. But yeah, to me, I feel like being vulnerable it's never been in question. It's just always sort of been.
I think that I'm really excited to be recording with you too in your awesome van, drinking wine while you drink a non-alcoholic beer.
My 1 week of cleansing. My 1 week of cleansing in my first episode of recording, and I can't even drink wine.
It's okay. I'll drink the wine for you.
Yes, please do.
And the water in equal amounts, hopefully.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm excited to talk about vulnerability. I feel like if you caught me on this journey a year ago, I would have been like, hell no, I'm not talking about vulnerability, because that's how resistant to the idea of vulnerability I was. I had no access to my emotions. So yeah.
That's a big change. That's exciting change.
Yeah, and I do think it's an exciting change, and it's also wrought a lot of changes in my life over the past year or two.
Right. Do you want to dive into that for a second?
Sure. What do you want to know?
Well, it sounds like there has been some change happening in your life in general.
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing is like an 8-year relationship came to an end. Probably because first I had no access to my emotions, and then I had a lot of access to my emotions. So maybe if I had more access to that, maybe it would have come to an end sooner, or maybe it would have just, blossomed into something entirely different a long time ago. Who knows? So that happened. I'm also like in a new relationship that I'm really excited about, and that I'm trying to be extremely communicative and vulnerable in. And so far that's been great.
That's exciting.
Yeah, like 6 months in.
That's really nice to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting talking to you about like that there's nuance to vulnerability. Like you've had to learn, okay, who am I going to be vulnerable with? Because sometimes it's brought like detriment to your life as well. And not being vulnerable at all has also brought detriment to my life.
Well, it's nice to hear that the grass is not greener.
Yeah.
It's not the solution. Yeah, the middle line, I guess. The middle line, yeah, as always in life, the middle line, knowing when it's okay to be vulnerable and knowing when it's okay to set a boundary. But I think that being vulnerable, to me, it's like so much tied to my physical sensations, because I feel emotions very much in my body. Like I feel sadness in my chest. I feel anxiety in my chest. My chest actually speaks to me quite often. And I think being vulnerable starts with being vulnerable with yourself. And that means being aware of what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Can you walk me through that process of like
going in there? Yeah. So
yeah,
this
what
is
does that
actually,
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a practice that I was so fortunate to find one of the best therapists I've ever had in my life. He was my first therapist that I ever tried and came with high recommendations in San Francisco in 2008. And, I was going through relationship issues with now my ex. And I sat down and I just said, I don't know. I'm not sure if this is going to work. And he really wants babies and I don't. And I just talked and talked and talked and talked. And the first thing he said to me when I finally stopped was, "And why do we have to make all these decisions today?" And I just stared at him like, oh, like calm the fuck down, basically. And then he did these practices where he asked me to close my eyes and breathe. And I was so uncomfortable at first. I was like, what is this guy doing? This is really just annoying. And I sat there and I breathed. And then he's like, okay, can you feel anything? I'm like, yeah, I feel a lot of tightness in my chest. And I swear that was like the first time that I actually learned to listen. And so I continued working with him. And then when I moved to Colorado, didn't see him, obviously, for a really long time. And then COVID happened and everything went virtual. And I reached back out to him and now I'm seeing him again. And it's been so many years and we have such a deep connection. But he really, truly was like the initiation of going into my body. And until this day, I have to go through that process where I can wake up in the morning and feel anxiety or some kind of angst or just like discomfort, and I don't know what it is, and it makes me not present, and just like it's uncomfortable. And then the morning goes on, and it's always when I stop, and that's why I always say, when in doubt, stop. To myself, when in doubt, stop everything you're doing because you're running. And oftentimes that's when I'm taking a walk with Eni, and I finally sit down by the creek, and then I'm like, oh, and then, this physical sensation comes up in me and can result in tears, for example, where I just let it out. And it's like letting the emotions go through my body is like how I have to process them. Or sometimes it'll be in yoga. Suddenly I'm like a pigeon and I'm just with my forehead on the ground and listening to some classical music, and I'll just and it just comes over me. But as long as I run and keep myself busy, there's no listening. There's no because you can't hear your body if you're not like trying to listen. And the breath, exactly.
Yeah.
The breath.
Yeah, you can't hear your body if you're like running. I mean, if you're physically running, sometimes that's like the best way.
Yes, absolutely.
Physically running,
yes.
but like
But if you're running, doing
just
stuff, sending
mentally,
emails,
yeah.
getting all the things done, and just feeling uncomfortable, and I think that's why meditation is so great. I mean, I fall off the bandwagon all the time, but I try to keep it up. And one thing that has helped me when I'm not doing it is guided meditations, because I look at it, I'm like, okay, this is a 10-minute meditation. These are my 10 minutes. I'm doing it, even if it's not great or I'm still like a little, fidgety. I feel like it's really good to stop. And I think that's where we give ourselves this chance for our body to speak, because that's where, everything in the end is, like, how do you say, like energy, right? Like even thoughts are energy, like everything is energy. And so we can rationalize all these things, but also just the body has its own language.
yeah.
And I think when you tap into that is when you can finally start being honest with yourself, and then therefore honest with others, like you said, people that you trust, where you can and be like, oh wow, like I found some clarity here. This is what I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense at all, the process that I just described?
It makes a lot of sense.
And how has it been for you, that process?
Yeah, I guess like there's a lot of fear for me around being vulnerable.
And
I
what
think
is
that's like
the
the core
fear?
of
Can you
it.
describe that fear? Like, what is it? Fear of loss?
Yeah, I think it's fear of loss. I think it's fear of like, oh shit, like I'm not supposed to say that.
Yes.
So maybe it's like internal editing going on.
Yes. I'm not allowed to feel this.
Oh, I shouldn't be feeling this,
Yeah.
but I am feeling it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think fear of loss is the main reason.
Yeah.
And I hear you. It's like a fear of loss of connection. Like, what are the
Yeah.
consequences of me saying these things? Am I going to lose this person?
And like, how amazing is it when like you say these things and someone is like, hey, I hear you. And like, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, that's like the most loving thing I've ever heard before.
Wow. That's so
Like, I
neat.
feel like I'm like rediscovering, like retraining my mind.
Wow.
I feel like I'm retraining my mind that it's like okay to open up to people, and they're not just gonna like leave or be like fuck you or just like bounce or just be like it's disgusting that you think that. It's like, wow, if you can like actually be vulnerable and open with someone and then their response is like, hey, thank you for sharing that, like I'm here for you. That's like the most loving thing in the entire world. And I feel like I'm just starting to like experience that.
Wow.
And like maybe I would have experienced that so much earlier if like I had even done it. Like I don't think I even like broach that because I was too afraid. Like, and maybe it was just like, I don't know why. I had like a great childhood. I have awesome parents, but it's just like I'm from the East Coast and New England, and it's like maybe you don't even. I don't remember ever like doing that when I was growing up. I don't know if it's the same in Germany, but it was like didn't come, or maybe it just doesn't come naturally to me personally.
Right.
And now it's like I'm just figuring out how to open up.
Yeah.
And say things and be vocal and not feeling like, oh shit, I'm crying like I am now. Like I shouldn't cry. so I shouldn't say it because something's wrong with that.
Right.
And it's like, maybe that's like all okay.
Yeah.
Because you're like talking to people who you trust and who you love.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just like totally fine to just like cry a little bit when you're talking.
It's so funny because I don't have a choice. I
Right?
cry so easily.
Oh my God, Isabel, me too.
It's beautiful. It is beautiful. I love it. I love doing it, and I love when others do it. I don't feel bad about it. And I will say, I think it's a little bit of both. To answer your question about, is it me? Is it my upbringing? I definitely feel like I was punished for my sensitivities. I think I was naturally, as you said about yourself, you might not be naturally vulnerable. But I was naturally vulnerable, and then grew up in a society in Germany that didn't necessarily welcome, somebody super sensitive. You know what I mean? And my parents were affectionate, but my sensitivities, like when I cried, they'd sometimes be like, oh, there she goes, runs to her room to cry, and I would just be in my room like miserable, crying and feeling so alone. And I think that is something that a lot of children go through. But I think I've found, as you said, that the most beautiful thing is to make myself vulnerable with the people that I trust, where I do feel safe and I do have these responses that you speak of coming at me that just feels so non-judgmental and kind, and you can just be you, and they make the space for you. I mean, I have a support system of incredible women in my life where, that vulnerability brings growth and love and support, because we can share and we can, cheer each other up or just, empathize with each other. And it's such a beautiful thing.
It's beautiful because you're like seeing the other person.
Right.
And like, that's beautiful.
The truth. Like you're
the truth.
Just the truth. I want to know, how are you? And I don't want you to tell me how your, day. I mean, yes, of course I want to hear how your day was, but I really want to dig deep. Like,
yeah.
Tell me what's really going on. I'm here,
Like there's beauty in that. And it's like, I'm almost 34.
Yeah.
Like, why am I just learning this now?
Oh my goodness. I was having this conversation with my therapist just today because I had this huge breakthrough moment with some other things. And I said to him, why am I learning this at 41? For crying out loud. Like, had I come to this point, Jenna, at like 30, I would have had 10 years of less of that punishment that I was making to myself. And so he just said to me, Isabel, don't be hard on yourself. We land when we land. So becoming vulnerable at age 34, or like understanding, relationship in family at 41. I mean, you learn when you learn. You learn when you're ready. We learn when something happens so big that we can no longer ignore the elephant in the room. We can no longer sweep it underneath the carpet. You got to deal with it. And now.
Yeah, like you got to deal with it. I feel like there's like, and I don't remember this situation, but I do feel like with being vulnerable, there's at least one situation where I like thought I was trying to be vulnerable with someone, and then maybe they like used it against me.
Yeah, and that's what I was mentioning earlier. The detriment is that, and I think that I have learned, and I keep learning it. Again, I'm like, really, Isabel, you did it again. I did it this summer with somebody again, and you meet somebody, this person is new, you're excited, they're charismatic and fun and open, and they open, so you open, which is the beauty of vulnerability. When you make yourself vulnerable, the people make themselves vulnerable. That's like, just a given. But suddenly, next thing you know, they use that piece of information against you, or make fun of it, or make you look like an ass in front of all these other people. And you're like, why was I not more careful with these
Yeah.
with this sensitive information?
It's like, well, fuck that. I'm never doing that again.
Guess you have to learn the hard way. And like I said, Jenna, I have learned that one so many times, and it was probably still not the last one. But I think I'm getting a little bit better at it. Although, yeah, I don't know. It's so hard for me not to just like be like, oh, I know what you mean, da 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 da, and just like go in there and just overshare. You know, Brene Brown calls it
What?
vulnerability hangover.
Oh,
It's the
shit. I feel like
perfect
I've had that
word.
all the time.
Yeah, like you come home from a party and you're just like, oh no, what did I say?
You're like, what did I do?
Uh-oh.
Where was I?
Who did I talk to? What was their name? Do I have my phone? That's really bad though.
Shit, where's my
Where am I? Wait, where do I live? Maybe the
Where are my
vulnerability
keys?
hangover might not be the worst problem in that scenario.
And like potentially the actual hangover that you have is like
It's my
more
way
than
worse.
that. Actually, I don't know about that. At least with the like actual hangover, you're like, I'm gonna drink water and maybe not drink so
ibuprofen.
much next
Yeah.
time
Yeah, that's
and do all
right.
these things. And with the vulnerability hangover, you're like, oh man,
Yeah, and you
I,
can't
like,
take it away.
trusted that you can't. Words cannot be
Yeah.
taken back.
No,
Isn't that
it's-
crazy?
It's so crazy. They're out there. They've done their thing.
Once you put words out of your mouth, you cannot take them back. And another person hears them, you can't take them back.
It's it.
A lot of people don't understand that.
Oof.
They just like throw up words and then they're like,
Yep.
I'm sorry. And you're like,
That doesn't really do it right now.
it's not doing it.
No,
but
it's
like,
not
why'd
doing
you
it.
say
You
that?
just kind of broke your trust and our trust, and I'm not gonna trust you again. Period. Yeah, it's a very, very simple process. Yeah.
Like we're gonna have to like build this trust back up
Yeah.
if like you say something bad.
Yeah.
So I don't know. People don't. Is it okay if I pour a little bit more wine?
Of course. Pour as much
Into this
wine as you
beautiful
would like.
mug.
Here you go.
Cool.
I was gonna go back to the relationship thing because I'm slightly jealous because my relationship with my husband Pata is a little bit different. I would say, even though you would think that's not the case because he's Latino, but Latino doesn't necessarily mean this, super emotionally in tune. I mean, because they're like viewed as very affectionate and all those things and loving and kind, and that is for sure the case. But our emotional connection has been one of our challenges and reasons for us to go to therapy, because I'm so vulnerable. And what happens with him, I'm not trying to be stereotypical, but I've heard other girlfriends tell me the same story. So there seems to sometimes be a parallel there that I make myself vulnerable, I cry, and he shuts down.
Yeah.
And then for me, that just, I catapult into this hole of deeper sadness, not feeling understood. It's like the opposite of what you were describing, with your boyfriend or, amongst us, like friends. And so I think that's been really difficult for us. And what we learned in therapy is, hearing each other's experience, which was really eye-opening. I think when I get into this mode where, I'm crying or I'm feeling something really deeply, one of the things that happens is that he probably is trying to fix it. And he's also uncomfortable. So even though I would like a hug and more closeness, he is processing some emotions that, he's trying to figure out. It's almost like he needs to like hold back or something because maybe he's just not comfortable, or maybe he's just feeling like he would like it to go away. And so our therapist said for Pata not to get overwhelmed by the emotions of mine, instead of making it this indefinite task, I can ask for a 2-minute hug. So So if I'm sad, I can go to Pata and be like, hey, I need a 2-minute hug. And literally that's all. Just a 2-minute hug. And Pata's like, I can do that. You know? And he said, and you can ask her for a 2-minute hug. And I thought he will never ask for that hug. And I was climbing in Rifle and I was gone for a while. And I came back to Lafayette and we instantly got into an argument and I shut down and I just started my day. And then he came downstairs and said to me, I need a 2-minute hug. He said, you just got home and we need to connect. So I was, it seems like really like, 7-year-old level of like getting to know our emotional connection, but it's so pure and it was so honest. And so, yeah, he does not have that capacity that you were describing, but I appreciate his effort and willingness to go to therapy and see how we can connect better emotionally and practice this exercise with me. It was really sweet.
That's so sweet.
He's like, I need a 2-minute hug.
That's so sweet.
It was really sweet.
And it's also like so uncomplicated.
Right.
It's like if you like can go to your partner and just be like, I need a hug.
Yeah.
And
Instead
they're
of
like,
going
I got
into,
you.
Yeah.
I
yes.
got you.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah.
Here's
yeah.
this hug.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So we're working on it. We're working on the communication part of it and, connecting in that sense. But yeah, it makes me very grateful for the easy emotional connections that I have in my life.
Yeah.
Because I feel like
Yeah.
Pat and I do connect in all these other ways very well. And I do appreciate very much how affectionate we are with each other. I don't think that's the same thing, but it is a love language, and I feel like we connect chemically and like that physically very well. And there's like this feeling of love. There's this feeling of safety. There's this good aura. It's this that I think it's mostly when I am sad that he struggles.
Yeah, I think I've gotten the feedback in the past too, where it's like, oh, you're crying or you're emotional.
Right.
And it's like, so like, I can't even talk to you right now.
Yeah, right.
And it's
exactly.
like, until you get your emotions under control.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. And that's why I
Like,
think that
I'm like, cannot stop this train
Yeah.
that's like coming down my face right now.
Yeah.
Even if it's like not that big of a deal. It's like maybe I'm just sad or I had a bad day and now we're talking about something hard. It's like I'm not going to like stop this train.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and you
so
shouldn't.
Yeah, like you
shouldn't.
gotta.
And I think that's why it triggered me so much when he reacted that way, because I have heard that too many times in my life. And I'm not willing to hear that from my husband. I need you to be able to give some space. I just can't be in a relationship. That's why, we were really rocky during that time and, still are. But during that time, I got to this point where I was like, Jenna, I cannot be with somebody who is so not in touch with his own emotions, who is so unwilling to give me space. I cannot. And then those therapy sessions really help. But it's so interesting because in that sense, he does remind me of your story where, and I'm not saying that he suddenly is going to become this really vulnerable man, but perhaps there's some growth, through working together.
Yeah, I think like just like the vulnerability stuff is something, after my breakup, I reached out to a really good friend whose name is Bill and who used to be my coworker. And he's very wise. And I think you've met Bill at that dance thing.
I feel like I have, yeah.
What was that thing called? Open dance? It was like super hippie shit.
Sunday mass.
Movement mass.
Yes.
That's what it was. Yeah. That's where. So I reached out to Bill and I was like, hey, this just happened. I'm a complete mess. we don't work together anymore. And he was like, cool, I'm in town. And he's like an older gentleman. People are like, ooh, who's Bill? It's like, no. He's like older,
he's
very skilled.
He's more like a mentor.
He's like more like a mentor, yeah. And then I was talking about the vulnerability thing, just being a mess in front of him. And he said to me, like, but look, like this, like you being like crying and being open right now, like this is beautiful because like I get to see you, like a part of you that I haven't seen before. And like I'm seeing you right now, like you as Jenna. And like, yes, you were hurting, but like, look at how open you're being with me. And like, I think that's like beauty when I see someone being open in themselves and opening themselves up. And I think like that's a really intriguing idea.
It's almost like the breakup was what broke those shells.
Yeah.
In some ways.
Yeah.
It's like you have to go through something to really get to the point, something that happens that really pushes you to that edge. And that's where the growth happens.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the growth happens. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, Isabel, this has been like the hardest year of my life. And it's also been one of the most magical years of my life.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Jenna.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
And maybe you can't have one without the other.
No. And that's the thing, going back to what I said in the beginning is being vulnerable also entails, great beauty and great pain. And for us to, get to that point, we have to live through some things that, just push us a little bit.
Maybe you have to like feel the loss, feel the pain in order to grow. Like maybe there's no growth without that. And I think like someone, I forget who it was, but like I heard this thing and it's like an analogy. And the analogy is that you're like a baby chicken inside the egg, right? So you're inside the egg, you're a baby chicken, and then you start growing, right? Mm-hmm. You're growing, and eventually your shell is too small for you.
Right.
What happens from the baby chicken's perspective? It's like the shell starts to break. From the baby chicken, that's literally the sky is falling. The sky is breaking. Their entire world is cracking around them. And that's what it feels like. It's like, what? Like, I don't want to leave this cocoon of warmth and food, but it's like, I'm getting too big for it. And this is like, the sky is falling. And you don't even know that it's actually like the beginning of something. In the baby chicken's example, it's the beginning of their life as a chicken, which hopefully is in like some lovely urban Colorado backyard and not like a factory farm raised for food. But it's like, hopefully you're being raised in this like idyllic pasture. But yeah, it's like you don't even know that this like crackling of your entire world is actually the beginning of a lifetime, the beginning of your life.
That's so amazing. I love that analogy because then there's this whole other world outside of that
you have no idea about.
Exists. And it's immense. It's vast.
It's so vast. And wouldn't you rather just stay inside that little egg where it's all nice and warm?
Yeah.
And there's food.
But the thing is the pain of growing too big gets too much. You have to listen to it. It's like you're not actually comfortable anymore. That's the thing, is you're actually not comfortable anymore.
Right.
So you don't really have a choice. You kind of do need to and want to in some weird way, get out of there because it's just your skin is crawling. It's like too much, too much.
Yeah. That's a really nice perspective of that.
Yeah, just like you have to. And And I feel like what I was mentioning earlier of my growth today with my family relationships and having this big breakthrough just of clarity and communication towards my mom. And my therapist was helping me. I felt like I was breaking out of those shells, and I was almost, like I said, upset that I hadn't sooner. But it's like I wasn't big enough to break the shells yet.
You're still just a little baby chicken.
I was still a little baby chicken, but no, I'm 41 years old. I should have broken those shells when I was like 25.
Right?
Why? Why has it taken me so long to just be like, hey, here's my boundary? It's not okay.
I don't know.
Why does it take so long?
Because it's like the time that it took.
Yeah, that's
right?
exactly it.
However long it takes, that's how long you needed.
And that's it.
And there's no use in being like, oh, like, darn it, I should have realized this before. It's like, well, that's not how it works. You need to experience the thing.
You do.
Yeah. Is the grass greener on the other side of Isabel, of being like super, super, super vulnerable to everyone?
No. This is what the listeners can take away.
Hello.
Take away the grass is not greener.
You're like, hello, stranger on the street. Here's my life story. Here are my hopes and dreams and fears. Blah. And to me, I'm like, hello, partner of a decade. I'm not going to tell you anything about what's inside or anyone. I'm not going to tell anyone. How about that?
Oh my God.
No one gets inside.
Nobody gets to know anything at all.
Yeah. I don't think there's a better one is better than the other.
No. And I think we both kind of are finding in the middle. That's what it sounds like to me, because we have found that the people that we trust are the people that we make ourselves vulnerable with and should make ourselves vulnerable with. And that it's important to, set clear boundaries with those that don't feel safe, and that's okay. But I do believe in vulnerability.
Me too. Finally, I believe in it.
Yeah.
And it's nice chatting with you. And maybe we balance each other out.
I know. Maybe you and I just help each other find in the middle.
Yeah.
That's nice. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, Jenna.
You're welcome. I'll continue to drink coffee and do my kegels.
Yeah, let's do just a few kegels before we end the show.
Okay, ready?
Okay, so pull the pelvis in, navel in, inhale. Hold the breath and release.
Okay, you're not supposed to make it loud.
No, you don't have to make those noises. That was weird.
Okay, I won't do.
And then also, just for the listeners, remember, when in doubt, do nothing or kegels. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And please feel free to send questions, comments, and topics you would like to hear about to Isabel@kegelsandcoffee.com. That is ISABEL@kegelsandcoffee.com, or you can find me on Instagram under Kegels and Coffee. Take good care, stay tuned, and remember, when in doubt, drink coffee or do kegels.